Okay guys, this strategy consists of 1:2 risk to reward ratio with a high win rate. For this strategy, I would be showing you an amazing strategy that has a very high win rate, as it uses just 2 indicator. For the purpose of this video, we would not be backtesting the strategy, but we would be going over some live examples. To better understand how the strategy is making good winning trades, we would be using the strategy on the Australian dollar United States dollar chart, and this is the 15 minutes time frame. So let's jump into it. Okay guys, before we continue, let me show you our main indicator for this strategy. Go ahead and search for the STD, Steadfast Cosine Transform Moving Average. This one right here by Locks. This indicator will be our main indicator for this strategy. Well, we would be using it for our entries, but before we add our filter indicator, let's quickly go over what this indicator does. This indicator is an experimental moving average that uses fast cosine transform to calculate a moving average. This indicator has standard deviation stepping in order to smooth the trend. By weeding out low volatility movements, the indicator gives its own color on the candlestick, and also gives a moving average that tells what the general trend in the market is. When the moving average is colored in red, it shows the market is in a downtrend, and when it is colored in green, it shows the market is in an uptrend. Now for the strategy, we would be adding a trend gauge indicator, so we would be able to identify when the market is trending or not. Go ahead and bring up the indicator panel. I want you to search for the ADX and DI, this one right here by Bikabu. Now this indicator is a momentum-based indicator, as the blue line tells us when we are on a trend or when the market is in range. As when the blue moving average is above the zero line, it shows we have a strong trend in the market, while when it's below the zero line, it shows we are in a ranging market or possibly a low trending market, while the green and red moving average shows what direction the market is on. As when the green is above the red, then we are in a bullish trend. Also, if the red is above the green, then we are in a bearish trend. But for this strategy, we would be using just the blue moving average. So before we move on, let's adjust the settings for this indicators. Double click on the STD, go ahead and untick the long and short, then click on OK. For the ADX and DI, we would be using just the ADX. Now go ahead and bring up its settings panel. I want you to untick the DI positive and DI negative, then change the level color to white. When you are done, click on the OK button. Now our indicators are set. Let's go over the rules for our entry position. Now for a sell trade to be valid, we need to have the price action closed below the moving average as our first confirmation. Then we would want to see the candlestick colored in red, and also, we would want to see our moving average colored in red as our second confirmation. Before we check the ADX to see if we have the blue moving average above the zero line, if all these conditions are met, we would place a sell order at the bottom of the trigger candlestick. Please note that if the ADX is below the zero line and we get our signal from the STD, then we would wait till we see the ADX close above the zero line, as it confirms the trend is strong enough to trade. So we see we met our condition here as price closed below the moving average, and we have our moving average colored in red, as well as our candlestick colored in red. So we can also see that the ADX is above the zero line. We would go ahead and place a sell stop at the lows of this trigger candlestick, as our stop loss level will be the recent swing high, and take profit at 2 times the risk. We can see we bagged this trade. Now exactly the opposite is true for a buy trade. For a buy trade to be valid, we need to have the moving average colored in green, and price has to close above the moving average. While our candlestick has to be colored in green, we would also make sure our ADX is above the zero line before we move on to open a buy trade at the peak of the triggered candlestick. So here we see that the moving average is colored in green, and we had the candlestick close above the moving average at this point, while the candlestick is colored in green. So we would check the ADX, and we could see it is above the zero line. Before we go ahead to open a buy trade at the peak of this candlestick, we would set our stop loss at the recent swing low, while our take profit is 2 times the risk, and we see we would have bagged in this trade too. Now notice that this previous sell is not valid because price was not triggered, as we place orders at the bottom of the trigger candlestick for a sell trade and the peak for a buy trade. like why is this buy signal over here? Now let's quickly go over some few trades, so you would better understand the strategy and errors to avoid while using the strategy. So at the moment, we have bagged a $40 as we bagged 2 previous good trades, so let's move on. Okay, here we see another entry for a sell trade. As we see we have all our conditions met at this point. We would go ahead and place a sell entry at the bottom of this candlestick. We see it was a success. Let's move on. So here is a buy trade we would have taken. We see that our conditions were met here, and this is our triggered candlestick. Notice the ADX is still above the 20 threshold line. Now if we placed our buy entry at this candlestick, we would have got our trade triggered at this candlestick. So let's go ahead and place our trade. And we see it was successful. Now let's move on. So here again, we see we would have avoided this trade because our ADX does not agree with the trade, so we won't be taking this sell trade. Let's move on. We see we got a buy signal, but the ADX is still below the 20 threshold line, so we won't be taking this trade too. The same thing here also, as the ADX is still below the 20th line. Now notice how the ADX indicator saved us from taking 3 bad trades, as this is what we need to make the strategy earn a lot of money by cutting our losses. So as we move on, we could see that we got a buy signal at this point, so we waited till we got our ADX above the 20th line here, so we would go ahead and place a bus stop order at the peak of the candlestick. Well, this is our first loss as price did not hit our triggered candlestick. We could use a proper exit strategy on this, but make sure you backtest them before you make use of them on this strategy. So let's move on. And we had a beautiful win here, as we see our conditions are met and price action traded in our favor. So please make sure you properly backtest on any pair you would want to use it on. And that's it, traders. Please make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you found this interesting. See you in the next one.